Germany has reclaimed China as its largest trading partner in the first 8 months of this year.
A strange tension hangs over Europe, as if the ground beneath its strongest economies has begun to loosen, and the old assumptions about stability no longer match the reality unfolding across the continent. A sense of unease surrounds the future of a nation once considered the example of discipline and efficiency, and that unease has grown into open concern as new numbers surface. Factories slow, and global rivals sense an opportunity to reshape the balance of power. Many are watching a historic shift in real time, and the deeper the crisis grows, the more questions rise about what happens next and who will shape the next chapter of Europe's economic order. The German economy is entering a moment that few believed possible in the modern era, a moment defined by vulnerabilities that had quietly accumulated and suddenly revealed themselves with enormous force. A country celebrated for the strength of its industry now finds itself confronting structural damage that can no longer be dismissed as temporary turbulence. The past several years have delivered a series of blows, each one heavier than the last, beginning with the pandemic that disrupted supply chains, followed by an energy crunch that dismantled the foundation of affordable production, and then a wave of sanctions and global tariff battles that pushed German manufacturers to the edge. The nation, long viewed as Europe's central engine, is now fighting to keep that engine from stalling completely. Production lines across the country are slowing as major firms report declining orders, shrinking margins, and growing uncertainty about the future. Germany's legendary automakers are losing ground in markets that once depended on their precision engineering. According to analyses from Deutsche Bank and Handelsblatt, the broader economy has slipped into recession, and despite attempts to stabilize the situation, inflation and electricity costs remain uncomfortably high. Investors who once trusted the reliability of Germany's industrial model are redirecting their capital to more promising regions, and a noticeable wave of young specialists is leaving the country in search of better prospects. The perception of Germany as the continent's stable leader is fading, replaced by an image of a nation trying to steady itself, while standing on the remnants of an old industrial era that no longer fits the demands of the current global landscape. Amid this turmoil, a development reported by insiders from Der Spiegel and the South China Morning Post has sparked intense debate throughout political circles. China has approached Berlin with a proposal that many describe as unprecedented in both scope and intention. The offer combines elements of economic aid and strategic partnership, structured in a way that presents itself as support while simultaneously reshaping the balance of influence in Europe. The package includes low-interest loans, long-term access to critical minerals, advantageous terms for German automakers operating in China, and a set of collaborative technological initiatives to a nation struggling with rising costs and declining competitiveness. The proposal resembles a lifeline offered at a moment of extreme vulnerability. However, no offer of this magnitude comes without conditions, and according to analysts from the Financial Times, the conditions attached to this one may alter the future path of German industry, and foreign policy. Beijing is reportedly asking not only for trade benefits, but also for equity stakes in major sectors of the German economy, including energy infrastructure, logistics hubs, and mechanical engineering centers. Diplomatic sources add that China is seeking a greater voice in Germany's external strategy, particularly in areas where Berlin's traditional alignment with Washington conflicts with Beijing's long-term goals. This would place Germany in a position where supporting the United States in its disputes with China becomes far more complicated, and it would signal the emergence of a new bloc driven by pragmatic cooperation rather than old alliances. For Berlin, the timing of this proposal could not be more complex. Chancellor Friedrich Merz, as highlighted by Politico Europe, is increasingly trapped between the heavy tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump and the opportunities presented by China's offer. On one hand lies a historic ally whose new trade policies are suffocating German exports in automobiles, batteries, and steel. On the other lies a rising superpower presenting itself as the answer to Germany's economic troubles. The proposal resembles a bargain that could stabilize key industries in the short term, but leave the nation vulnerable to external influence in the long term. Within Germany, the reaction has been divided. Some business leaders argue that China is not a threat, but a chance to revive declining sectors, especially given that Beijing has quietly held leverage over rare earth metals and critical components essential to German factories. Many experts believe China had anticipated this moment by creating dependencies that now strengthen its bargaining power. According to sources from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, private discussions with the Chinese delegation have taken place for weeks. The delegation reportedly offered an aid package approaching 20 billion euros, including subsidies, loans, and shared investment funds, in exchange for guaranteed access to strategic infrastructure facilities in Hamburg, Duisburg, and Leipzig are included, all of which serve as essential transport and production nodes not only for Germany, but for Europe as a whole. Should the proposal be accepted, China would gain influence in the arteries that connect the European market, a development with consequences far beyond Germany. What makes the situation even more surprising is the relatively muted response from the United States, which appears more focused on domestic priorities than on countering China's growing reach. President Trump's tariff measures have accelerated the distress already spreading through German industries, creating space for China to present itself as a stabilizing force at a moment when Germany's traditional partner has become a source of economic pressure. Analysts from the Economist Intelligence Unit describe the unfolding situation as a subtle economic takeover, one that relies on strategic financing, infrastructure deals and industrial partnerships rather than open confrontation. Inside Germany, anxiety is rising. Policymakers disagree sharply about whether to reject China's offer to preserve sovereignty or accept it to prevent further decline. The government maintains a careful stance, but every indicator suggests that a historic decision is approaching. The question facing Berlin is whether to remain committed to alliances that once brought strength but now offer limited relief, or pivot toward a future aligned with a nation intent on reshaping the global system. Recent reports from Reuters suggest that China is already influencing major economic discussions across Europe, a reflection of how much leverage Beijing has accumulated during this period of upheaval. The scale of Germany's difficulties becomes even clearer when looking deeper into the numbers. Production facilities belonging to BASF, Siemens, Volkswagen and BMW have announced reductions in staff, temporary closures of production lines, and the relocation of operations to regions where the cost of energy and materials is far lower. The loss of Russian gas disrupted a model that relied heavily on affordable energy, leaving companies exposed to electricity prices that remain among the highest in the developed world. Bloomberg Economics estimates that the cost of producing cars in Germany has increased nearly 40% in 2 years, making it increasingly difficult for German vehicles to compete in global markets. Declining orders from China and the United States have added pressure, creating a situation where even the most resilient companies are struggling to maintain profitability. Economists now describe these developments as signs of deep structural transformation rather than temporary turbulence. As this industrial decline unfolds, new reports from Nikkei Asia and Süddeutsche Zeitung reveal that China has returned with an even broader proposal presented during a closed summit in Beijing. According to insiders, Chinese officials offered a framework for a joint industrial alliance that would integrate German technological expertise with Chinese financial resources. In exchange, Beijing wants access to Germany's advancements in electric vehicles, robotics, and energy technologies, areas where Germany still maintains a competitive edge. Chinese media portray the arrangement as mutually advantageous, while European analysts view it as a calculated step toward absorbing a weakened partner into China's economic sphere. These developments have intensified political divisions within Berlin. Members of the Social Democratic Party and influential figures in the business community see the proposal as a temporary measure to keep jobs alive and prevent further decline. Opponents warn that accepting the offer risks losing control over critical sectors and compromising